Hey there, welcome to this week's Phlearn Pro. We've got some wonderful things ahead of you. I can't wait. You can probably hear it in my voice right now. I really love retouching photos, and I think you guys are going to really love it too. And there are many ways you can do this. I'm just going to show you the ways that I know. So if you guys have other ways of retouching photos, those are not wrong. This is just the way that I know how to do it. And hopefully following some of this advice, you guys will be able to retouch your photos, and you know, your clients will be happy and your friends will be happy and all kinds of fun stuff. And I'm really excited for you guys to experience this with me. All right. Well, we've got a wonderful photo here of a very pretty girl. And we took this probably about a year ago, I would say. Just totally regular studio setup with a beauty dish off to her camera right. And she's on a white background there. It's looking a little gray. And what we're going to be doing here is basically retouching this photo. And we're going to turn it into kind of like a glamour photo. So let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing to the photo. Let's create a new layer. You can create a new layer, by the way, by hitting Shift, Option, Command, N if you're on a Mac, and Shift, Alt, Control, N if you're on a PC. All right, I'm just going to grab my brush tool and we're just going to start circling things. And this, it might seem a little bit weird what I'm about to do, but I do this with every one of my photos before I start. And the reason I do that is because it helps me to kind of see things from far away, and it allows me to kind of know everything that I want to do before I get in and start doing it. It's like, you know, Michelangelo, before he carved out David, he knew what it was going to look like before he started just chipping it away, and that's kind of what we're doing here. So what I like to do is kind of circle out the things that I don't really like or things that I think could be changed, and then we go about changing them. So this will be on a layer, and we're just going to keep this visible the whole time. All right. Well, let's start off with some simple stuff. Even stuff like this. I mean, if you don't like that little seam there, we can get rid of it. And oftentimes I will get rid of the stuff like that because it doesn't add to it. It's got a little bit of redness, like a flake or something on her shirt. So we need to get rid of that. The rest of her shirt is looking pretty good. Now, for this tutorial, I'm going to go pretty much full out. We're going to retouch everything. And that's not necessary always, guys. Sometimes you can leave some things in. But we're just going to retouch everything so I can show you how to get rid of everything. All right. And so we're even stuff like this, we're going to take care of little things like this. Normally I would probably leave those alone, but I want to go ahead and show you guys a full-on beautiful retouch. All right, we'll take care of things like this, little spots and things like this. A lot of it's going to be like little details, right? So we need to take care of that. I'll even take care of her earring thing there, and areas like that. Just kind of spots, and everyone's got these guys. So, you know, personally, I don't feel that there's anything wrong or anything unattractive about having some different coloration on your skin. Gosh knows I've got it. But that's not the lesson for today. Today's not about humility, and today's not about what we like. It's about, if this was going to go on the cover of a magazine, what you would probably need to get done if you wanted to get paid for the retouch job. All right, so we're going to take care of those things, and this is going to look fun by the time we're done with it. All right, so that's what we're going to be taking. That's most of the minor stuff. Now, some of the major stuff, I want to take care of, like the bag under her eye right there. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take care of some of the wrinkles right there, and maybe even some of the stuff in her forehead. We're going to reduce the amount of texture on her forehead there. I think we can take care of that. We're going to take her eyes, and we're going to brighten those up a little bit. Might even give her some eyelashes. That'll be pretty fun. We're going to carve out her cheekbones a little bit better. I'm going to reshape her ear a little bit. That's just getting kind of picky. Let's shave her neck, and that'll be fun there. We're going to clean up her hairline here. We'll just fill in some of these gaps here that I don't really think are necessary. We'll clean up her hairline too, and then we're going to cut this right about there, and all this is just going to go away. All that stuff we don't need anymore, that's going to go away. We'll take care of this, a little bit of hairs and things like that there. We might add a little bit of color to her lips, and get rid of some of these like little areas of glare and things like that. We're going to go ahead and give her a nice shape on her eyebrows real quick, and that'll be a really cool technique on how we're going to do that. We're actually going to use the pen tool to get that shape going on. And yeah, we'll just do some general color corrections and apply a little bit of makeup, and we might even do a little bit of eyeshadow. Why not, right? So all that stuff we're going to be doing today in this tutorial, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thanks a bunch, guys. Let's go ahead and turn this layer off and get into it. All right, first thing I want to do is make a new layer, and on this layer I'm going to grab our this tool right here. It is our healing brush tool, and I feel like this is the best tool for the job when you're taking care of little things. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and sample these points. Now, it's important, guys, when I'm sampling these points, first of all, I want to make sure my sample's set to current and below or all layers. If it's set to current layer and we're on a blank layer, it's not going to do anything. So let's set it to current and below, and I want to be sure to sample a point that's pretty close to the skin texture in which we're actually painting. In other words, if the skin texture looks like this right over here, we need to sample from that same area. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and click right there. That's going to make the sample, and then we're going to go ahead and paint it in. And when I let go, it's going to take the texture from this area and the color from that area and blend them together. So we'll try that again. All right, sample over here and paint over there. Sample over there and paint over there. Now let's side this larger area. What we'll do is just sample right over there and paint over the entire large area, let go, and it'll blend in. And if you need to do a little more blending, not a problem at all. Just keep going with it. So again, sampling and painting. Make sure that you are sampling from areas that are relatively similar to the areas you want to be actually painting. Just give you another example. If I sample here and then paint over there, obviously that looks totally weird. So we just need to sample from the right places. All right. Now, this is a step that I usually go ahead and do quite a bit here. I think it surprises some people, honestly, how much I do with the healing brush. You know, a lot of people want a general, overall, like 2-second skin retouch. Well, the problem with that in most cases is if you have something that's going to be just a general, overall thing that's just going to take care of all the skin at once, you're going to lose a lot of detail and a lot of texture. I don't really believe in blanket skin retouching. And the reason is because, you know, just like we said earlier, there are many different skin textures on a person's face. And by just getting rid of all of the skin texture on a face, it just kind of makes people look fake and weird. It doesn't make them look good, in my opinion. Now, your opinion might be different, and that's totally cool. But in my opinion, I'd rather keep people's skin texture intact and, you know, just kind of make it like a slightly more even version of that skin texture. But, you know, to each their own. And like I said, this is the way I do things. And if you want to do things differently, totally cool with me. In fact, tell me about it, and maybe I can learn from you. All right, we'll just hold down Alt or Option here, and I'm going to keep sampling. And you can see I'm going to just keep on going with this for a while. Now, you don't want to get too close to your edges, or it's going to start bringing colors from the outside and things like that. All right, there we go. And continue on. We're just sampling and covering up areas. So usually I'll spend quite a bit of time doing this because I really want to just take care of every little thing that I see. Doing this is going to help me maintain the skin texture that we've got, and at the same time it's going to just allow me to get rid of any of these high points and low points. And that's basically all what skin smoothing does, guys. It evens out the areas between high and low in someone's skin. And I've got a really cool little demonstration I want to give you. One second. All right, we'll make a new layer and, new layer, and we'll just fill this with white. All right, here's the demonstration that I want to give. So rough skin would look something like this. We'll just grab the brush tool. Rough skin would look something like this. Pretend these are pores or pimples or something like that. Now, if you have light coming from the side or, you know, just a different angle than straight on, what you're going to get is like a highlight here and then a shadow here. All right, so that's going to be a shadow there. Then you're going to get a highlight here and then a shadow there. So what that reads is, you know, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow. Now, if you can smooth that out, so you get tiny bit of highlight, tiny bit of shadow, smooth that out, or even flat, like a flat piece of paper, a light coming on here, you just get a really nice even gradation of highlight to shadow. You wouldn't get highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow. So that's basically the idea we're taking with skin. Instead of having these areas of highlight followed by areas of sharp shadow, we're just going to smooth everything out and make everything look like it's kind of smoothing in. So a real world example would be right here. This is obviously a highlight area, and then we have this shadow area, which shows up as a crease of skin. You know, this other area does up here as well. Obviously, we'll probably want to leave that. But other areas like here, we can take care of those areas. All right, and things like that as well. And then some larger areas where we have, you know, highlight, and then we have a shadow, and then a highlight, and then a shadow. It's just kind of some dips and whatnot. So we're just going to work on, evening all that out. All right, and let's go ahead and just get back to our healing brush tool. I hope that little demonstration helped. I just like doing stuff like that. All right, and just painting this in. This is a lot of fun, and honestly, skin retouching is one of my favorite things to do in Photoshop for a couple of reasons. One, you have a real good idea of the before and the after. You can really see a big difference, and it gives you a great sense of accomplishment to be like, wow, you know what? I really did do a lot with this photo. And so that I really like about it. You can make people look better, which, you know, oftentimes your clients are going to be happier about that. You know, I will say one thing when it comes to skin retouching, guys, though, be sure to talk to your clients about it. You know, if this is like your brother or whatever, probably not as important. But if this is a real client, make sure you know to what level of skin retouching they want done. You know, if they want everything gone like we're doing today, you need to know that. If they need, you know, just minimal skin retouching, that's important to know. All right, there we go. And we're just kind of evening all this stuff out. Let's get rid of that area too. Beautiful. All right, and we can even take care of areas like that. Looking great. And she's on her way to the beauty pageant. All right, we're going to take care of that area there. And this area we can't really, well, we can maybe use this tool. Yeah, it's doing okay. Not doing perfect, but people probably aren't going to be looking there anyway. Let's just make sure to, you know, paint in with the actual grain pattern of the shirt there. There we go. So we get a nice even seam there. Cool. That's looking good. So that's the first step. And when skin retouching, I always start off with the relatively small things and then move on to the large things. So basically we just took care of the small things, and now we're going to keep on moving up, and we'll take care of some of the larger things. All right. Now the larger things, I like to use tools like the patch tool to do that. So we're going to hit Shift J one time, and that's going to bring our patch tool. Now the patch tool you cannot use on a blank layer. So we're going to have to make a stamp visible layer. You can hit Shift Option Command E or Shift Alt Control E if you're on a computer, a PC computer, if you're on a computer. I hope all of you are on a computer. And now we can use our patch tool. Basically what our patch tool does is it allows us to select an area and then click and drag it to another area, and it patches it in. It gets rid of anything that we've got selected there, which is really, really cool. Generally, you don't do it with whole eyes and things like that. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But an area like that, you could just bring in there and deselect, and that would just kind of take care of that crease. Again, this is a pretty blanket technique, and what I mean by that is it just, you know, kind of treats large areas in the same way. So I like to kind of do like patch stacking or whatever, where I'll just, you know, I'll blend it in with the patch tool. Like I won't just do one large area. I'll try to do a few areas at a time. There we go. So it doesn't look like, you know, just one area is exactly the same as another one. All right. Now all the skin texture, we're going to kind of lessen a little bit, because honestly, it's a little bit too much detail for me anyway. But the patch tool works a lot like the healing brush tool. In other words, you can take an area, it takes the color from one area and the texture from another area and blends them together. The patch tool just works on a large selection basis. The healing brush tool does not. All right, well that area didn't really work, so we're just going to hold down the Alt or the Option key, and I'm going to minus this out of my patch selection, and we'll just take care of that little, you know, the area under her eye there. There we go. Very cool. So these are just a couple different methods, and there are many, many ways to do this. All right. Whoops. Hit the wrong button there. Now, as far as the skin texture and things like that go on her nose, we can see, like, you know, what a difference that makes. I generally don't leave these things at 100% because they look weird. So what we're going to do is put a layer mask right there on that layer, and I'm just going to paint black at about 30% to kind of reveal some of the original details under there. You know, so we have a definite idea that there was, you know, people have wrinkles in their skin, but you can make them a little bit less deep and they'll be okay with that. All right, now we're going to take care of some of these little areas here on her nose. And there are many different ways to do this. And honestly, I'm just going to use the patch tool again, guys. Or sorry, the healing brush tool. And we're going to sample an area that's relatively clean and start just knocking it out. And instead of painting with like large, big old strokes, you'll notice what I'm doing is painting with a lot of really small strokes here. And that's just kind of allowing me to take care of these little areas individually. And I know you're thinking to yourself right about now, gosh, this is going to take forever, Aaron. Why would you show us this technique? This is horrible. And the answer is, it's because it's the best technique that I know about. All right. I should definitely qualify my sentences there. It's the best technique that I know about to get rid of this sort of thing. It's not going to go about compromising the shape of her face or anything like that. It's just going to take care of these highlights and shadows. And you can see as you go more and more, you have a larger area that you can actually sample from. So it kind of goes quicker the more you do it. And again, I'm using a pressure sensitive tablet, guys, which makes this sort of work very quick. If you guys are doing a lot of Photoshop and a lot of retouching and whatnot, yeah, get a pressure sensitive tablet. Sorry, someone just text messaged me. It totally threw off my train of thought. You guys could probably tell that. All right. Nobody text message me. I'm making Phlearn Pro, dang it. You guys are important. All right. There we go. I'm just taking care of all this sort of thing and looking really great. So we can see already a lot of the nose is taken care of and it looks good. You know, it still looks like skin texture. It doesn't look like, you know, El Weirdo came by and gave her fake skin. El Weirdo, by the way, is a fictional character I just made up. It does not exist. And I hope you enjoyed that little story. All right. Now, if you didn't have any areas of skin to sample from, in other words, if there was, you know, if you just felt like, man, all the skin everywhere is just really not the right texture. It's not the texture that I want. You can actually sample from a different portrait as well. If you had another person with, you know, a skin that had a little bit less detail in it or something like that, you can use the healing brush tool and sample from another portrait. That's not a problem at all. You just bring the portrait in right beside this portrait and sample away. It's totally cool. That's the trick of the pros right there. All right, we don't need to do it in this one, so I'm not going to. But you can if you want to. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of keep going here a little bit more than what I need to. All right, and we'll just zoom out. So you can see that her nose really has become, you know, pretty clear and doesn't have a lot of texture on it. Now, again, this sort of thing, just like about everything else, I really don't want it to be 100% visible. So I'm just going to lower my opacity of that whole layer just a bit so we can see some of that skin texture there. It's just kind of lessened a little bit. All right, let's grab a brush tool, and I'm just going to paint in black a little bit right around that edge so it kind of gives us a nice, there we go. And that looks pretty good there. So we're looking pretty good. We've got that area taken care of, and that's one way to just take care of a lot of little spots. Now, would you go around and do this on her entire face? I probably would spend a little bit more time, maybe 10, 15 minutes on this if it were me. If it were you, you might not be that interested in spending more time. So there are some other methods that work as well, and I'll show you those. All right. I'm just looking at her eye right there, and it looks weird. This is another reason why I think it's really wonderful to work in layers, guys, is because if you see something you don't like, it's on its own layer, right? So you can just kind of go back and turn it off and on and be like, you know, oh, I did like that. Keep in mind, if you do make a stamp visible layer just like this, anything under that stamp visible layer is, you won't be able to see if you turn it off and on because the stamp visible layer is completely full, right? It's like a fully opaque layer. So you have to turn that layer off, and then you can see what's underneath. All right, now if you need to see something under there, you can just add a layer mask to a stamp visible layer, and that'll work out for you. All right, we're looking pretty good. So we've taken care of the nose, we've taken care of some larger blemish areas, and we've got quite a bit more to do, and I want to start off with her eyebrows. I think that's going to be really good. So we're just going to hit Command-G, shift-click the three of those, and Command-G those. That's for the skin right there. We're going to next get the eyebrows. So we've gone over the pen tool a couple times on Phlearn Pro episodes previous to this one, and not sure if you've joined me for those, but if you have not, here's how it works. Hit P for the pen tool, and pen makes paths. The pen tool makes a path, And just be sure you're clicking on this button right up here. This is for your paths. Over here is shape layers, which it's default on shape layers. Don't click on that one. Paths are better. All right. Basically how paths work is you click on 2 points and it makes a straight line between them. If you click and drag, you've got a curved line. Click and drag again and you've got a curved line. Click and drag again, you've got another curved line. Now, the cool thing is these lines can be changed at any point in time and they're controlled by these little arms right here. Now, to access these and actually change things around, hold down the control or the command key and it's going to bring up this little white arrow and you can click anywhere on these little points right there and actually just move them around, which is really cool. So you can make a pen path and after you're done making it, you can kind of just move it around and have fun with it and do really whatever you want. And that's holding down the control key. You can also move these things individually as well. All right, now if you hold down the Alt or the Option key, you can grab these and move them to where they form angles. You can also click here, it'll form an angle, and then you can drag out either way you want to. So really cool tool. The pen tool is really wonderful, and we're going to be using it to shape some eyebrows. So let's just go ahead and delete that path. We don't really need it right now. We're going to make this layer here, and we're going to make some eyebrows. So on a new layer, paths really don't have anything to do with layers. I just always like creating a new layer because it's like a mental reset. All right, we're basically going to create a pen path now that is going to be her eyebrow shape. Now, don't worry if you don't get it perfect from the get-go. That's not what the pen tool is about. The pen tool is about tweaking things and getting things right in the end. So, you know, that might look kind of horrible, but it doesn't matter. That's our pen path. I'm just going to hold down Command and click on it, and now we can just kind of move things around, and we can make the eyebrow shape look how we want it to look, which is really fun. All right, we're just going to bring that in there. Now, I'm going to hold down that Alt or Option key, and we're just going to let that kind of slide right there. Beautiful. All right, and we can just see it's kind of turning into shape here, turning into the eyebrow that we want. Very cool. Now, the key also with the pen tool, guys, is don't click if you want to cut out an eyebrow or something like that. Let's go our paths, and I'm just going to save this path. We'll just call this eyebrow 1. All right, or Yeb 1, whatever. Let's create a new path here. You don't want to do this. You don't want to just like click a bunch of times all over here. And the reason is you're going to have a really junky selection. It's going to have a lot of kinks and knots and all kinds of nastiness in it. What you really want as a goal here is to create these kinds of shapes with as few clicks as possible. If you could do it with 2 clicks, 3 clicks, you know, something like that. As few as possible is going to give you the cleanest shape. All right, so we're going to delete that path. So we've got this path. I think that's looking pretty good for an eyebrow there. Now we're going to go ahead and create one for here as well. So let's just, again, we'll click on there, drag this around. There we go. I'm not too worried about the outside of that eyebrow. That doesn't really concern me. And then we're going to connect this on there. Hold down the Control or the Command key. And there we go. Now these are rough guides here, guys. This is not like an end-all, be-all. Eyebrows have to be shaped exactly like this. But here's the cool thing. What we're going to do is go ahead and turn these into a selection. Let's just call this eyebrow 2. We're going to turn these into selections, and then we're going to trim the eyebrows based around these selections. Now, if I turn this path into a selection, you can do that by right-clicking on it and just going to Make Selection. You're going to see you can have a feathering of your radius here, and it's important to feather the radius. The reason is if it's too clean of an edge right there on around your eyebrow or whatever, it's going to look fake. It's not going to look real. So we're going to feather that by about 1 pixel. And that's basically going to turn that path we made into a selection. So now that path is a selection, which is perfect. All right, what are we going to do with this path selection that we just made? I know it seems like we've been doing quite a bit here, but it's all going to make sense here in just a minute. You know what? Seeing that path, there's a little bit of it doesn't get high enough right here. So I'm just going to deselect. We go back to our paths, click on that, and I'm just going to click here and bring that up. There we go. And you know what? I think I want to bring this area in just a little bit too. That's what I love about paths. It's not permanent. You don't have to make up your mind right from the get-go. You can always change them. All right, let's turn that back into a selection. Right-click on it, say Make Selection, hit OK. Now back on my layers, What I want to do is copy skin from the outside into basically transforming the eyebrow. Now, I don't want to do this inside the selection. I actually want to do this in the reverse of it. So I need to inverse my selection. We can go to select and then down here to inverse. So now instead of inside my eyebrow is selected, everything else outside my eyebrow is selected. And we know how this works. Basically, you know, when you're in Photoshop, if you have a selection active, you can only edit what's in the selection. So now that's our selection, everything outside the eyebrow. So what I'm going to do is hit the clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to hold Alt or Option there and just paint in here from outside of our eyebrow. I'll hold the clone stamp tool, and I'm painting right now at about a 30% opacity, so I can just kind of build this up and just painting from the outside in. Now I'm going to hit Command H real quick, and that's going to hide that selection so we won't be able to see it. And we can see painting from the outside in. I don't have to worry about creating a nice shape here. That's not important. I'm just kind of painting this in wherever I want to. And my selection is going to take care of the eyebrow shape. So we use the pen tool to make our selection. Okay, now we're using the clone stamp tool to clone stamp up to our selection that we made with the pen tool. Totally cool, right? All right, I think this is just awesome. There we go, and let's just bring this in here. Now, obviously, we don't want an eyebrow to look this well defined. Things don't actually look like that on a person's face. You know, unless you're plastic surgery nightmare. We don't want it to look exactly like that. So especially that area underneath there. Now, if you don't like it, just grab the eraser tool and erase it away. And you can just kind of go back and do it again if you need to. There we go. Now I'm using the clone stamp tool here instead of the healing brush tool because I want a direct copy. I really don't want to worry about where the source is coming from and things like that. The direct copy works just fine for me. All right, and we'll just deselect. So we've shaped her eyebrows just like that, which is very cool. Now we're going to just take this one step further. We've got the general shape in there. I just want to make sure it actually looks more real. So we're going to just put a layer mask on there. I'm going to paint black on my layer mask at about 40% and just allow a little bit of feathering to go on here. So we keep that shape of the eyebrows, right? But it looks like it was created more naturally now instead of, a complete artificial mess. It now should look as though, that was a natural eyebrow job there. All right, there we go. And that's pretty cool, huh? So we've got that in place. If you want to layer mask any of this out, and I'm going relatively quick here, if there are other areas that you feel, if you want to do a better job with the clone stamp tool, that's totally fine, but that's a cool technique right there. All right, let's do the same for the other one really quick. We're just going to right click, say make selection, hit OK. All right, we're going to go back to our layers now, make a new layer, and Shift Command I is going to inverse our selection, and we're just going to use the clone stamp tool to clone stamp from the outside in real quick. All right. There we go. Beautiful. Let's deselect that, and I'm just going to lower the opacity of this a little bit, and then we'll put a layer mask on here and paint it about 40 or 50% black. Just to kind of give this a nice natural edge. So we're shaping her eyebrows, but they still look like they've got a nice natural edge on them, which is great. All right. She's already looking much happier. We've got some general skin retouching to do. Let's just go ahead and group those and just call that eyebrow. All right. We've got some general skin retouching to do, and we've got quite a bit that I want to take care of, and I'm going to show you guys some cool methods to do this. And we're going to start off with a basic, there are two ways to do it. I'm going to go ahead and show you both ways. There's this basic skin blur technique, which I actually do not prefer, but I think most of you guys will like this technique. So we'll just go ahead and cover it. I'm going to hit Shift Option Command E. We'll go ahead and make that stamp visible layer. And we're going to hit Command J. So I've got two of those stamp visible layers. All right. This one right up here, we don't need for right now. On this layer, what I want to do is go to Filter, we're going to go to Blur, and then we're going to go down to Surface Blur. And what this is going to do, it's going to blur, but every time it sees like a sharp edge, it's going to stop blurring, which is pretty cool. Now, you can change the radius. This is how much it gets blurred. You can change the threshold, which is like what it basically stops at. And in general, I would say choose a larger radius and a larger threshold than you think you might need. All right, so that's our surface blur. We're going to hit OK. Obviously, this looks horrible, but it's okay because we're not done yet. But yeah, basically this just blurs any surfaces, and when it hits an edge, it stops blurring. So this is a really great tool. Now, one problem with this is, well, there are a lot of problems with this, but it's completely destroying skin texture in most areas. You can see this area, you still have skin texture, but in most areas, it's completely destroying it. So what we're going to do is, we've got this layer back on top of here. What I'm going to do is use this layer to get some of the skin texture back on this other layer. And first we need to make that a desaturated layer. So I'm going to hit Shift-Command-U, and that's going to desaturate the layer. All right, next we're going to hit from normal, we're going to change this to an overlay layer, and then we're going to run a high pass filter on this. So we're going to filter, other, and then down here to high pass. And basically here what I'm looking for is my skin texture to return. So like right here, maybe not the best option, but you know, somewhere right about here, our skin texture looks as though it's returning, which is great. All right, and we're just going to hit OK, and we can see on top of this blur, now we have our skin texture back, which is great. Okay, this is not the blanket skin retouch technique that I would suggest to anyone. This is just something that will help get us there. Okay, these two layers, very powerful when used at 100%, and I don't recommend using them at 100%. So what we're going to do here, we're going to group those two layers together. All right, we're going to put a layer mask on that, and I'm going to hit Command-I on that layer mask, making the layer mask black. Now what we're going to do is use our brush tool, and we're going to paint white at about 40%. And you can see, let's just show you what that layer mask looks like there. I'm just painting in this area, but I'm keeping pretty in control of where I want this skin retouch to actually come in. I'm not allowing this to just be visible everywhere. And by doing this, it's allowing me the ability to, you know, selectively smooth some skin out, which is very helpful. And it's basically allowing me to keep the details as well. All right. This is a very valuable technique. So anytime you have a big blanket technique, like I would say the big surface blur technique, just make sure that you don't just hit OK and then leave it, because you're going to get something that you probably won't like in a year or two. You'll be like, man, I really overdid that. At the time, you might be like, whoa, this is so cool. And then a year ago, down the line, you'll be like, yeah, I probably should have toned that down. I do that all the time. There we go. Looking pretty good. So we've taken care of some of the skin areas that we want to with this technique, and that's looking pretty good. Now, we do have some other great techniques up our sleeves that I want to show you guys about, and I think you're going to really enjoy these. So this takes care of like a general skin retouch, but it really doesn't take care of skin shape and, you know, really correcting out those highlights and shadows. So there's another technique that I want to share with you guys, probably my favorite technique in Photoshop, and it sounds like so simple, and it is. Basically, all you do is use the brush tool. All right, now here's where we get started. We're gonna make a new layer. Got a hiccup, sorry. We're gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna choose my brush tool. Now, we're gonna paint at 5% opacity, so you can hit 0.5 on your keyboard really quickly. The reason we're painting at 5% opacity is because this is a build-up technique. In other words, I don't want it to just be like, you know, boom, this is what you got on. You know, like when you're putting makeup on your face, you don't just like stick the whole tube on your face and expect it to work. You pile on a little by little till it's right. So this is what we're doing. We've got our brush tool, our opacities at 5%, and we're on a new layer. Now, I'm going to choose a relatively large brush here, and we're just going to sample a color. So let's say we sample this color here, and then we're going to paint it in. And then we're going to sample another area, and we're going to paint it in. And the goal is to get everything to be blended very smoothly. Let me just give you a very quick example. You guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. So let's say this was area of harsh skin right here. What I would do is sample this and paint it in. Then sample that area and then paint it in there. And then sample that area and paint it in. And sample maybe from the outside now and paint that in from the inside again. And then maybe, right here at that place. I'm just painting this in and painting it in. And I'm keeping a pretty good control of, what's getting painted. And eventually your harsh line disappears. So this is what we're going to be doing with her skin. All right. Now this is a technique that doesn't take 5 seconds. It takes a while, but it's good in that it takes a while because it forces you to take your time. Anytime you are working on someone's face, you are, basically you have the ability to completely restructure a person's face, which is a good thing. And especially in the right hands, it can be very helpful. In, a person who's being a little bit too hasty, that's usually not too good of a thing. So just be careful when you are restructuring a person's face. Take your time with it. Study it. If you get to where you like something, maybe leave the room for a few minutes. Come back, and if it still looks great, you've done a good job. If you come back and you're like, whoa, what am I doing? You probably need to go ahead and give it another option or another round. So that's usually what I do, guys. I'll do, a big blanket technique like this, a big skin retouch job, and then I'll just kind of leave the room for a few minutes, let my eyes and my brain readjust. Then I'll come back, and if I like it, I've done a good job. And if I don't, I know I still got some work to do. All right. And basically we're just sampling and painting. This is not, there's nothing really that secret here, but basically what I'm doing is trying to blur in all the differences between the highlights and the shadows. And this is totally one of those techniques. I mean, it's kind of an art form. So the longer you spend on it, the more time, the more thought you put into it, the better your result is going to be. And again, if you do get to a place where, you're painted on something and you don't think it looks good, not a big deal. Just grab the eraser tool, erase away what you've done, and keep going. Rock out with it. So we can use this technique for many different things, and we're just going to smooth this area up there too. I don't feel like that should be so dark up there. There we go. Now, I'm doing this zoomed out, and this may not make a lot of sense because we are, working on skin. It's like, well, don't you think you'd want to be closer? And the honest answer is most of the time when I'm working on skin, I am pretty zoomed out. And the reason is because it gives me a really good idea of what's going on a global scale rather than a really local scale. I can have each individual pore may be perfect, but I've got some really big dips and gaps in the face that need to be taken care of that I won't see if I'm too zoomed in. So that's why I enjoy working kind of zoomed out. Like this area right here, I don't think I did a great job with it. I'm just going to grab the eraser tool and erase away at about 30%. Then we'll just go ahead and start painting this back in. All right. Now, since you started watching me do this, you may or may not have noticed, any intense changes going on, and that's totally cool. But I guarantee you there have been some pretty big changes to this image. The idea is to keep everything, kind of just going really subtle and not doing big intense changes in just, very short steps. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and sculpt her cheekbones a little bit while I'm at it, I can do that too. Let's make a new layer. And I'm just going to grab this shadow color that's in her cheeks right there, and I'm just going to start painting it in. Now, you'll be able to see this a little bit more because it's darker. There we go. But we're just kind of shaping her cheekbones and allowing the natural shape of everything to just come out a little bit better. And again, this is just with the brush tool. Now, are we destroying skin texture when we do this? Most definitely. Your skin texture is going out of the window. This is the worst technique if you want to maintain skin texture. However, we already know how to get that back, right? All you have to do is grab a stamp visible layer from underneath, run a high pass filter on it, and hit it on an overlay layer, and you've got your skin texture back for the most part. So generally when I do this sort of thing, I'm not incredibly concerned with skin texture. I do want to make sure that the end result gets the skin texture that I want, but I I know that usually I can get back. All right, and that's looking pretty good. Now we're going to just keep on going with this, guys. I'm not done here. I'm going to zoom out even more, and you can see, like zoomed in here, it's hard to tell big variations. Zoomed out, it gets quite a bit easier. So on a new layer, we're just going to keep doing this, and this is really what makes the difference, I feel, between like a really nicely edited portrait retouch and that something doesn't, that maybe didn't have a lot of thought of it. You can look at it kind of at any level, and it really does work. And that's what I go for. So you just want it to be smooth at every level, up close and far away. There we go. And that's looking pretty good there. So is this the easiest thing to do in the world? No, definitely not. But with a little bit of practice, I think that, you'll definitely get it. And it takes me some time too. It's not, it's not something that takes 2 seconds. Obviously, I mean, you're watching me do it right now, so it takes some time. All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure we get that area really nice. That's a pretty key area to get, right? And we can see I'm still painting at about 5% opacity. All right. Looking good. Now, if I want a little bit brightness in her cheeks, I'm just going to create a new layer. We're going to grab maybe a color from up here and start painting in and give her some, a little bit more brightness in her cheeks and around there, maybe, right here up on her eye, and just kind of bring that around for her forehead and, just kind of help some of the lighter areas around it a little bit. All right. So we're looking pretty good. Now, I wouldn't say that it's done completely yet, but let's look at the before and the after with all that I was just doing. So there's the before and there's the after. Now, all this, you may like most of it. If there's some areas you don't like, in other words, like I think I overdid it on her cheek there a little bit, just group all those layers, put them in a layer mask, and then, paint black on your layer mask at about 30% or so, and it'll just kind of let some of the original values show through. So you can get this really nice, there we go, this really nice smoothing of everything. Oh, this opacity, the whole layer is at 30%. There we go. Let's just make sure we paint that right. You can get a really nice smoothing of everything without necessarily having to compromise on what you're working on. So we can see there's it off and there's it on. All right, I feel like we're looking pretty good there. Now, again, the skin texture, it is still visible in most places. If you want it to be less visible in some places, just paint more with your paintbrush. If you want it more visible in some places, just add more visibility through, through one of these layers, these high pass layers. All right. Well, I'm going to just move on from the skin just a little bit. We might come back and hit a few key spots, but I think we've done a great job so far. So we're going to move on from the skin, and I'm going to talk about her eyes and see what we can do with her eyes. So she has very dark eyes. A lot of people do, and we just want to see if there's any bit of brightness that we can bring back from those eyes. Let's see what we got. I'm going to grab a new layer, and I'm just going to paint with a white paintbrush. Why not? There are tons of ways to do this. I'm just painting with a white paintbrush. I'm going to hit from normal. I'm going to change that to overlay. And we can see it does, in fact, bring back a little bit of brown in her eyes, which is perfect. Now we'll just zoom out and see if we like that or not. I'm going to put a layer mask on there and make sure we paint it away from areas that I don't necessarily want it to be so visible. But even a little bit of detail in someone's eyes is better than just complete darkness. There we go. So just painting white and hitting that on an overlay layer really helped that out, which is really cool. All right. Now, the brush technique that we used before, you can also use that on a smaller scale. And I'll show you that here. We'll paint it about 10% here. You can use this on a smaller scale to really correct some of these wrinkles. Like, let's say if you don't have any, a good place to sample, or you just really don't know where to sample or whatever, you can even out these small little areas too, and this can be a pretty powerful tool. So, don't forget about your brush tool. He's there to be friends with you, and, he just wants to hang out. And I feel like A lot of people are like, no, brush tool, you can't come to this party. We're going to use fancier tools. And the brush tool just sits at home night after night. No one ever uses it. And he's like, please, guys, I've got such potential. And this was officially the coolest story you've heard all day. All right. So, point is, even these little things, I mean, you can, if you want to create highlights in the skin, just grab that, you know, and you can even create some of these highlights in here. So, just remember that back in the olden days, this was, the brush tool was all they had to paint photos. Because they just had brushes and they were actually painting. And now it's all digital, which is fun. So the brush tool still is a really powerful tool. All right, taking some of that there, and that's autofocus, so I really don't mind what's going on there. Just take care of that little wrinkle area there. All right, looking great. Now I'd like to add some eyelashes to our model as well. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this. In my opinion, just grabbing a, you know, like an eyelash brush or something like that offline is usually not the best option because eyelashes are so different. I mean, they, you know, right here they're coming out at you, here they're going off the side, they're not even visible down on the bottom. So it's really hard to just get some like big blanket technique that's going to take care of all of your eyelashes. So sometimes what I'll do is, you know, honestly, I'll just grab the brush tool, paint it about, you know, 90% opacity and just use a really small stroke here, and I'll just paint in my own eyelashes. And again, you know, I've got a Wacom tablet. It really helps for this sort of thing, but if you don't have one, then you can just choose a very large sample size, or sorry, a very small sample size, and just kind of paint in your own as well. There we go. And notice I didn't sample black, guys. I sampled a color that was already in this image, which is, you know, it's this color right here. You know, people for the most part don't have a lot of black on their face. There we go. So just kind of add in some more eyelashes. Why not? If they look good, we'll keep them. If they don't, we won't. Not a big deal. But, you know, totally just using the brush tool here. Eyelashes for the bottom, I'm not totally sure. I'm just going to make a new layer. And, you know, I think I'm just going to make some like kind of small little thingies here. This bottom is going to be hard because she kind of doesn't have many eyelashes there. So it, you know, adding to that, it's like, well, you know, you're not adding to any existing eyelashes because she doesn't really have any. So either you can go about, you know, trying to create your own, which is kind of what I'm doing here, or you could just say, yeah, you know what? I don't even like bottom eyelashes anyway. Not a big deal. All right. There we go. And we'll just hit the eraser tool and just erase that away a little bit. It's supposed to be darker. All right. Looking good. So adding those eyelashes to her, yeah, I feel like that helped out. Why not? All right, we're going to go ahead and group those things as well. So we've taken care of the eyelashes. We've taken care of the eyes. We've still got some things that I want to do with the skin, but we're just going to take that on hold just a little bit, and we're going to focus on her hair. All right. I'm just jumping around all over the place, but this is usually how I work in Photoshop anyway, so makes sense. All right. Her hair, we're going to be using the pen tool again. So let's grab a new layer. Let's hit P for the pen tool. Let's go to our paths and just create a new path. And like this is an area we can really easily trim. So I'm just going to come in from the outside there and kind of join up with our hair. There we go. Hold Alt or Option, grab that and bring it on down. And there we go. Hold Alt or Option, bring that on down, and then back around. So that's making a selection right around there. And we can use the same clone stamp tool that we used earlier to take care of this. So we'll just right click on there, hit Make Selection, feather this. Maybe we'll feather it a little bit bigger, 2 radius. And on this layer, we'll just grab our brush tool, paint here 100%, and just paint that in. Why not, right? And there we go. We've got a nice clean edge there that we can actually use. And if you want to just put a layer mask on there, you know, make it look a little bit more natural, that's totally cool too. So just taking care of some of those areas. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing up here. So we're going to grab our pen tool, P for the pen tool. We're going to hit our paths and make a new path. And I'm just going to come in from the skin here. Now, I don't want to start here on the skin and just kind of work my way up, because when I go into a selection, it might start too far on the skin, and then you're going to get kind of like a jagged little jump right there. So I don't really want that. So what we're going to do is start down here, and I'm going to just do something like that. So we get a really nice gradual curve into her cheek there. And it's not something that's going to look like kind of like a step in. It's going to be a really nice gradual curve. There we go. Beautiful. Now, I'm not too concerned with her eyelashes there. I could just repaint those in, or, you know, put this layer under the layer that has the eyelashes on them. So I'm just going to go right around that, right around her eyebrow there. All right. And now comes the fun part of deciding where I actually want this hair to join up. And, you know, maybe I'll go ahead and take it all the way up here. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter, though, because we can always change this sort of thing if we want to later. All right. And there we go. We're going to keep going up here, up and around. There we go. And this is going to be a selection. So let's right click on this, make selection. 2 pixels looks just fine. Zoom out a little bit, grab a layer, and on this layer, I'm just going to grab our brush tool, sample this color, and paint it in. And voila, Insta Haircut. Hit Command H to hide that selection. All right, and let's just paint that in there. Pretty cool. Instant haircut, not too bad. Now, let's go ahead and deselect that. We've got everything in place. What I want to do next is just make sure we add a layer mask to this, and paint black on the layer mask anywhere where we actually want, you know, the hair or whatever to be visible. And this, we're just going to use our layer mask and kind of paint this in there. All right. And, you know, I think a little bit of a fringe or whatever is important here. You don't want this to be like too clean looking, right? You want it to look like, all right, well, you know, there's probably a little bit of hair coming out from her face and whatnot. So, all right. And then this area looks kind of weird. So we're just going to figure out what we want here. But the great thing is, you know, in using the layer mask here, we're able to decide how we want this to work. In other words, you know, I can use my layer mask, but I never have to worry about painting back or, you know, getting rid of hair completely, because that was based on the selection we made with our pen tool. There we go. All right. Cool. So I'm basically trying to just do kind of like little bitty strokes here. All right. And then what we're going to do is come back from the inside, and we're going to do little strokes as well. And, you know, these are going to make it look like there's actually hair there. So I'm basically, with my layer mask now, which is kind of cool, painting in hair. And about 40%. I'll just kind of make this back invisible there. All right. Very cool. Now, if you do need to blur an area or something like that, like if it's too sharp right there, on your layer mask itself, you can hit M for your selection tool. Go ahead and make a selection, and then you can go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur, and that's going to blur your layer mask. It's at 250 right now, but you know, if you just want to blur it just a little bit to make it look more real, you can do that too. All right, cool. So we've got a little bit of a haircut going on, and we're going to take care of this area up there. So let's just zoom in, and I'm going to hit the clone stamp tool. And what I want to do is just clone stamp this area onto a new layer. All right, and now on this layer, what we're going to do, this is pretty cool. I want to change this layer mode from normal to darken. So this lighter area is not going to show up. And so anywhere I want to put this in her hair, it's just going to kind of fill in some of these gaps, which is exactly what we want. We just want to fill in some gaps. All right, so right there, that'll be a gap filler. And Let's just put a layer mask on there. And I'm going to hit Command-I on my layer mask, invert that layer mask. And then there we go. We just use that as a little gap filler there. And we can do the same thing here if we want to. Just put that there. Change this from normal down to darken. And move this on around. Do whatever you want. So you can kind of decide your own haircut, which I like a lot. Now, if we really wanted to go in here and shape everything around, you could use like a, what's it called? A liquify tool or things like that and shape her haircut. Yeah, you know what? Why not? Let's do it. We got some time. All right, I want to make a new layer, Shift Command Alt N, and then we're going to make a selection. Let's make a stamp visible layer on top of that. We're going to make a selection around the actual area that I want to liquify. The reason I'm doing this is because this is a pretty intense process on the computer, and if you can avoid processing part of the image, it goes faster. All right, we're going to go to Filter. You know what? I'm going to hit Save because honestly, the liquify tool has it just really likes crashing Photoshop. So I always say before I use the liquify tool. So we're going to go to Filter. We're going to go down here to liquify. All right, so it's only going to bring this area that's in the selection into the liquify dialog, which is great. If it loads, it may take a year or two, not sure. And as it's loading in, there we go. Brought it up on my other screen. So I'm just going to transfer it over here for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and make that full screen. As it's loading in, we can see the main tool I want to use here is always going to be the forward warp tool. We've got a bunch of other tools here. I'm not too incredibly concerned with these guys. They don't seem to work well for the most part. The forward warp tool is my friend. So we're going to bring our brush size up to a nice big brush size, and our density and pressure, usually I keep those relatively low. Basically, you just click and drag to move things around. So if I just want to like move, you know, her haircut around and things like that, you can do that. And, you know, if you're doing this with her face, that's one thing you want to stay relatively cautious about. But if you're just doing with a haircut, that's totally cool. You can do that. You know, a haircut probably doesn't matter too much if it sticks out in one area or not. All right, I think that looks kind of cool. Let's give her a slightly longer neck there. Very nice. And you know what? I think I do want to go and do some things in her face. So I'm going to hit OK. There we go. Shaped her hair up. Oh, that's kind of nice. Oh, and you can see there's where I did her neck, but I really didn't. Let's just deselect. Because I had the selection a little bit wrong, it didn't really work. So I'm just going to use my eraser tool and erase that. All right, so that's her hair. Now on a separate layer, let's go ahead and take care of some things on her face. I'm not saying anyone needs the liquify tool. It's just kind of fun, and you can do some things that I'm going to show you I think you'll like. All right. One of the things I want to do here is I want to kind of make her a little bit happier. And you're like, how do you do that? Well, you can actually change facial expressions with the liquify tool. So we're going to do so. And I'm going to use this thing over here called a freeze mask. Now, I know I said I don't use most of these things, but the freeze mask is, it just basically keeps things still. It keeps things from moving. So I'm going to do a little bit of stuff with her eyes, but first I'm going to paint the freeze mask on underneath her eyeballs. There we go, because I really don't want this bottom part moving at all. All right, so remember to keep your freeze mask underneath the eyes. And there we go. This is the erase freeze mask tool. So you can just kind of control that a little bit. Now, whatever I do with my forward warp tool, it's not going to affect the area that's got the freeze mask on. All right, so if you need something to stay in place, use that freeze mask. Now, what I'm going to do is zoom out, and we're just going to choose a really nice large brush. Really big. In general, I would say choose a brush that's even larger than the one you think you need. And we're just going to click and drag this up. Not a lot, you know, just a little bit. And do the same thing there. All right, and we're going to hit OK and see if we like that. Now, this is one thing that, you know, like, hey there. These things are subtle. So, like, you know, do them and then see, do I like that? Do I not like that? I think that works totally fine. So we're just going to leave it like that. Totally up to you. I like to do these also in layers. So I'm going to hit Command J again, which is going to make a duplicate of that. And we're going to select out this area. Shift Command X will bring up our liquify tool. And if I want to shape her nose or whatever, I can do that too. But I like to do these things in layers so I can selectively turn everything off and on later with my layer masks. I'm not too incredibly concerned with, you know, making all the changes to one layer. I can kind of just make everything happen at the same time. Make her smile more a little bit. And these things, guys, are really like, don't make huge changes, please. It'll look weird. All right, just do subtle things and it'll help you out a little bit better. All right, we're going to reshape her ear just a little bit. Why not? Just for fun. And let's just zoom out. And then I can bring her cheek in a little bit. All right. There we go. And we'll just make her neck a little bit thinner, which is going to make her head look a little bit higher up. And it's just going to make it look a little bit better in the end. All right, now we're going to shape her cheeks a little bit. Her cheekbones are going to come out a little bit, and then right here is just going to go in. There we go. And really, guys, you have to be careful here because you can really destroy someone's face. You can make them look totally weird. Like her eye looks pretty weird right there, so we might have to go back and kind of reshape some of that. But let's hit OK and see what we got. All right. There we go. Her eye looks a little bit weird. We're just going to go back and reshape that. So what I want to do now is we're going to shift click all three of those layers. We're going to group them all. And again, we're going to add a layer mask to that and just kind of like layer mask her eye and say, you know what? I want her eye to look normal again. So let's just make her eye look normal again. All right. There we go. Looking pretty good. So we can see the difference that makes. The liquify tool makes quite a bit of difference. Now, totally up to you on whether you want to use the tool or do anything like that. If you don't, totally cool. I don't mind. I just want to show you the tools necessary so you can do the job you want to do. All right, we're looking great. Now, we've got some other things I want to take care of. Let's go ahead and take a new layer, and I'm just going to grab my brush tool again, and you can see the skin retouching thing. It's kind of like it's not a one-time hit a button and it's perfect. Like, you know, you'll just start seeing like, oh, you know what, I could probably smooth this area or smooth that area or, you know, whatever. I didn't make this transition as nice as I could have before. And that's what I'm just kind of working on right now, is just making my transitions here on the cheek and areas like that just a little bit nicer. So they come across, they just read as being a little bit more smooth. And that's what we want, really. All right. And you can see, you know, I spent 2 minutes on that, but it does make a difference. All these things, even though they're subtle, they definitely make a difference. And, you know, when you compile a bunch of subtleties together, that's when you really start to get, you know, something pretty great. All right. I'm going to make another new layer, and we're just going to kind of take care of right over here on her eyes. I'm going to paint it about 10% just to go a little bit quicker here. I'm going to just take care of this light area right over her eyes, and there we go. I do like what was going on there. I think this texture was just a little bit too much, so we're just going to back that opacity off quite a bit there. All right, looking good. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some eyeshadow to our model, so we'll go ahead and group those layers too. You can see we've got quite a bit of groups here, and really great. We have a lot we can work with. We're going to add some eyeshadow, and for this we're going to use a really great method that is called the blend if method. All right, what I want to do is grab a dark purple or something like that and start painting in here with a totally normal color. You know, we'll put this on a multiply layer to make it a little bit darker there. All right, and just kind of add this in, and I'm not a professional makeup artist. I do know a great one named Tara DiPetrillo, but I am not a professional, so if she were standing behind me, she'd be like, Aaron, you're playing that wrong. But she's not, so I get to do whatever I want. All right, we're just painting this in here, and why not? I'm going to put some color right down here too. So with this color, we're painting in, the relatively dark. We can always back things off, right? So we're painting in this color relatively dark. And next comes the blend if technique. And basically, you can choose whether to have a layer visible or not visible where the underlying layer is darker or lighter. You can do this with blend if. All I'm going to do here is just double click right here on layer 27. And we've got our layer style dialog. Now down here at the bottom, we see blend if. You have an option for this layer, that's just the purple, and the underlying layer, which is her face. So we're going to play with our underlying layer. I want this purple not to be visible where the underlying layer is lighter, because that's highlights, and I don't want to have the purple destroy the highlights. So what we're going to do is hold down the Alt or the Option key. I'm going to grab this little slider there. It's going to separate these two out. So make sure you hold down Alt or Option, separate these two out, and then drag it from the right to the left. And look at this magic that happens right here. Isn't that amazing? So now this purple is only showing up in those shadows, and it's looking a lot more real, which is totally cool. All right, so the purple is showing up in those shadow areas, and I can kind of just keep going here and adding a bit more purple in colors and what I want. There we go. So really cool. This is only showing up in our shadows, which is going to help it make it look a lot more real. Now, I didn't do a great job with it, but that's what layer masks are for. Going back here and cleaning up everything and making sure, making sure everything looks how we want it to look. All right, let's make sure it's not visible there on her eye. There we go. And now on another layer, maybe I'll grab like a blue. And you know what? I want to go with more pink. I like pink. And we'll just change this layer from normal down here to overlay. And, maybe we'll just have a little bit of fun with that. I don't know. Something like that. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm painting kind of too much here. I'm painting overly much. We can do the same thing with our blend if. You can even tell it not to be visible or it's darker, but I don't think that really works with this layer. And we're doing it a little bit too much. And then I'll just come back here and I'll paint black with my paintbrush on the layer mask. And the reason I painted kind of a little bit too much to start with is we have this really nice blend going on there that, there we go, that you wouldn't get if you started off with a really small brush and painted in like that, because that blend is what happens when a large brush feathers out into nothing. All right, that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and group the two of those layers and just kind of lower the opacity there. You can do the same technique to lighten or darken eyebrows or eyes or things like that. So we're going to show you that. We're going to grab our brush tool. I'm going to hit my white paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint over those eyes. Double click on this area. Tell it to not be visible where the underlying layer is darker, so Alt or Option, and it's just going to disappear from the darker areas. Okay, and we'll do something like that. Change this from normal to something like soft light, and we'll just change our opacity now, and you can kind of see it brings back some of that light. And you can even do it, here in the highlights of that, highlights of the lips and things like that. It's just going to not be visible in those shadow areas. So that's a really powerful tool. And again, blend if, it stays with the layer. It's nothing, it's not a blending mode. It's not anything crazy like that. So you can still use layer masks and whatnot if you want to. Let's use another layer on here. And this time I want to paint with black at about 50%. There we go. Give her a nice Cleopatra eye. Neato. All right, we're going to double click on this, tell it not to be visible where the underlying layer is lighter. All right, and then we're going to put a layer mask on this as well. So this is just going to help darken eyelashes and things like that. If we need to do anything like that, you have that option as well. All right. Pretty cool. I think she's looking definitely a little bit happier. Now, as far as the skin goes, I know I'm kind of like jumping all around here, but I really do. I work like this, guys. I'll work on something that I like, like, okay, that needs to get fixed, and then I'll see something else, and I'll come back to the skin, and then I'll come back to something else or something like that. So this is just how I work. I know it's a little bit scatterbrained, but you're in the mind of an artist right now, so that's what you get. A scatterbrain is on the menu 24/7. If I could turn it off, I'm not sure that I would. All right. So I'm just kind of painting it in here. And, oh, I grabbed my clone stamp tool. I went to grab my healing brush tool. So even after, you've done all this, you can still go back here with the healing brush tool and take care of some of your minor skin areas. There's no rules. I just like to start off with the smaller areas and work my ways up a little bit bigger. All right, next thing I want to do is go ahead and even out our skin tone, because we got some weird like magentas going on here, some like desaturated areas here. Like this is a lot less saturated than right there. So what we're going to do is grab a nice skin tone. This is very beautiful. She's got wonderful skin, and I'm just going to paint all over her skin with this color. So I hit my brush tool, B for the brush tool, and then hold down Alt or the Option key, and that's going to allow you to sample your color. All right, so I sampled that nice color in her skin, and now I'm just painting all over her skin, avoiding areas like her eyebrows and whatnot because, we colored that already. All right, now we're going to change this from normal down here to color. That's going to be pretty weird. Sometimes hue looks a little bit better, but for this sake, we are going to choose color. All right, and I'm just going to lower the opacity of that a little bit. There we go. Now, I do enjoy that color. It's looking pretty good. However, here in the shadows, a little bit too harsh for me. So what I'm going to do, double click on that, and we'll just tell it not to be visible where the underlying layer is darker. Okay, and then this is so cool. This color layer is going to be less visible in the shadows of wherever I paint it, which is like so powerful just in that. All right, so her skin's a little bit more even now, which is great. Now, if I want to grab some blush or something like that, let's grab a nice pink. You can always change this color. We're just going to put this right on the top of there. So starting here and kind of coming right down that way, just going to start painting this in there. All right, and then we'll do the same thing there. We're going to change this to something like soft light. Let's try soft light. All right, looks horrible. No worries. Things usually do when you first start off. We're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. All right, and we're just going to give this a bit of a blur. So we got about the right shape, right? And now we're just blurring it till it actually starts to fit in. Hit OK. Now it's the wrong color. It's horrible. So we're going to hit Command U. That's going to change our hue saturation. So we can just change the hue a little bit. All right, we can change the saturation, and we can even change the lightness if we want to do that. All right, and we'll hit OK. So we can see we started off with something pretty bad, and that's moving into something a little bit better. We can even move the whole layer around, change the layer opacity, and guess what? We can double click on it and tell it not to be visible where the underlying layer is lighter. That's going to help it look a little bit more realistic too. So we used one layer right underneath this to even out all of the skin color, right? And then we're using this layer now to add back blush into her skin, which is very cool. Now, generally I don't like things overdone like that, so we're just going to lower the opacity of that, and that's going to help that out quite a bit there. All right. She is looking good. Let's go ahead and grab a new layer, and again, just like we're doing before with the healing brush tool, just kind of taking care of these areas. Now, if you did want to just kind of like blanket, take care of all that area, you could, but I don't know. Kind of looked weird when I did that, so never mind. Let's just try going in at a little bit smaller scale there. All right. And in a second, I'm going to just check back with my original. You guys remember when we started this, we had like original layout of what everything we wanted to do with this image. And I'm just going to make sure to check back with that to be sure that we've got, in fact, everything we wanted. All right, so I painted that over there. Then I just grabbed the eraser tool and erased it about 30%. So it basically just, it covered that area up, but now it's not so covered up. All right, looking pretty good. Now we could still go here and use the brush tool and things like that. That's totally cool. What we are going to do is add a little bit more highlight to her skin, and you can do this in several different ways. I'm going to just hit D and then X, and that's going to change our color to white there. And we're going to use our brush tool. And we're going to paint right over there. Give her a nice highlight there. Why not? You know, something kind of coming in there. Maybe on her forehead. Yeah, I don't know about on her chin. Maybe we'll do something on her lips. Yeah, we'll put something on her chin. Why not? There we go. I'm just painting in some highlights there. We can always blur this in a second, which we'll need to because I started painting them in a little bit harder than I should have. Now what we're going to do is just double click on this. I'm going to change this so it's not visible where the underlying layer is darker. So Alt or Option, click here and drag out, just like that. All right. We're going to change this from normal to something like a soft light. Hit OK. Let's just double click on this and tell it even more a little bit. All right. Now we're going to give it a little bit of a blur so it doesn't look too weird. All right. Pretty cool. And that's a way we can just add a little bit more highlight into the skin. And you know, the forehead's a little bit too much for me, so we're just going to use a layer mask on the forehead. There we go, right underneath the eye there. All right. That nice little area in the cheek really helps out, I think. There we go. Looking great. Let's check back with our original layer and see that we've done everything. All right, we brought in her earlobe, taken care of that. We've taken care of her cheek, small blemishes. We need to add some color into her lips. We've added color into her cheeks, did her eyebrows, did her eyelashes, everything like that. Took care of all that stuff and gave her a haircut. So all that we have to do left is put some color in her lips, and then we're good. So this way I know, it's like, yeah, that's all we have to do left. I know when I'm done, which is great in Photoshop, so you don't spend 10 years on something. That shouldn't take you that long. All right. There we go. I'm just going to grab red. For these things, guys, really doesn't matter what color you choose. I mean that. And the reason is you can always change these colors. You just hit Command U or Control U if you're on a PC, and you can change these colors at any point in time. So paint with red, cool. If it looks good, great. If not, change it up. Doesn't matter. All right. You can always add a blur to this sort of thing too. There we go. And we're just going to change this from normal down here to soft light. There we go. Let's just double click on this. Tell it not to be visible where the underlying layer is lighter. All right. Let's just give it a little bit of a blur. There we go. Hit Command U, and we're just going to change this hue a little bit because it's not looking incredible real. Lighter or darker. All right, makes them look a little bit more glossy, a little bit more color in there. All right, and looking at this, I think her cheeks are just a little bit overdone. So I just want to hit Command U on this layer again. Make sure you're on your layer, not your layer mask, and we'll just bring down the saturation a little bit and you know, change the hue up a little bit too. There we go, and that's looking pretty good. So we've taken care of quite a bit of our image now, and we're ready to add a little bit of sharpening, and then we're going to be done. Great. Let's make a stamp visible layer. Shift Command Alt E. I'm going to hit Shift Command U, which is going to desaturate. We're going to go to Filter, Other, and then down here to High Pass. Now we're going to just choose a high pass filter that allows us to see this skin texture really nicely. Something like that. Hit OK. We'll change this from normal down here to Overlay. Very cool. And now I'm just going to hold down Alt or Option, click on my layer mask button, and we're going to paint white on our layer mask where her eyes are. And that's just going to help draw a little bit more attention to her eyes, brighten them up, maybe her lips as well. All right. So that's just kind of, you can see, I'll just zoom in for you. It's going to add a little bit more sharpness to her eyes. Keep clicking on the wrong thing. All right. So I like that. If you guys like that too, do it. If you don't do it. Either way. All right, we'll just lower the opacity there a little bit. Very cool. And there we are. Let's just zoom out and make sure we're looking pretty good. I think we're looking great. She looks happy. She looks fun. And I think she's looking great. So that is our skin retouch lesson, guys. And let's go back and look at the original because I always feel like this is a very fun thing to do. All right, prepare yourselves for takeoff. This is the after. Let's go ahead and click on the before. Hold Alt or Option down, and you can click on an eyeball of a layer. It'll make all the other layers invisible, just that layer visible. So there's our before, and here's our after. Let's see that again. There's our before, and here's our after. All right. So if you had any questions as to whether or not skin retouching does exist in the world, and they do this to magazines and things like that, you could probably figure out about now that they actually do make people look prettier and it can be done. So that's great. Now, choose to use this power at your own discretion. With great power comes great responsibility. Don't make people feel bad, make people feel good, and show them the afters and tell them they looked very pretty in the befores and you didn't retouch a whole lot. Even if that's not true, your job is to make people feel good, not to make yourself feel good. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that lesson. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for the support, and tell everyone you know about Phlearn and Phlearn Pro. If you don't, I'm going to show up on your door and give you a wet willy, and you're not going to enjoy it because I give a mean wet willy. All right, guys, thank you so much for all your support, and I will see you, Phlearn you later. Bye, guys.